Indianapolis Symphony Brass Quintet.
Okay, they played 2 weeks ago. We had a percussion group come last week, and they were the Naptown Stomp or something.
Yeah,
anyway, they were awesome. And now today I'm so excited to have, these are some of the top musicians here in Indiana and probably the United States. And I'm so thrilled that they're here to come from DePauw University. So let's give a big round of applause to the faculty. names of those two pieces?
The first piece we played was the Barta Pascalia, and the
I
second.
won't grade on spelling.
Okay, B-A-R-T-H-E, and Pascalia is P-A-S-S-A-C-A-I-L-L-E. It must be a French spelling of it. So I'll do the Pascalia again. P-A-S-S-A-C-A-I-L-L-E. Pascalia is like a fugue, is that right? Okay, yeah. Pascalia is like a fugue, which is you have a kind of a theme that it's kind of like a canon, if you know what a canon is, like row, row, row your boat. Where is that right?
I think the bass line just repeats.
Okay, I see. All right. Well, yeah. Okay. But you have a kind of a theme that goes on, and then another one, similar theme comes in, and it's just kind of they play off each other. I believe that's right. But it's been 30 years since I had music history and theory in college. So the other piece was by Joseph Haydn. Haydn, Presto, and that one would be a transcription. The Barta would have been written for our group for this type of ensemble. The Haydn would be something that was originally written for a different group of instruments, but that was rewritten for our group.
So we don't have a conductor. You guys noticing how we're starting and stopping and changing tempos? Anybody see anything?
What did you say? Okay, I use my flute a lot because it's easy for them to see. And a lot of times, well, if I start, then I'm the one who breathes. But if I'm not the one who starts, whoever starts breathes. And what do you notice about the breath? Anything about it? Yeah. I didn't do that.
Can see it.
Yes, noticeable, yes. Yeah.
You use a lot of body language.
Good, thank you. We try and communicate as much as we can by, waving around, and it's helpful. Well, sometimes, sometimes you can have people that wave in your group and you wish they wouldn't because it's confusing, so it's a mixed blessing.
Well, one thing we often do, unfortunately, in a quintet, unfortunately for the flute player often does get the job of starting us because it is more noticeable. And years ago, I remember being coached by the second flute of the Boston Symphony, and he absolutely did not allow the flute player to be the conductor because he had a pet peeve about having to be the one always starting the group. But it's actually, that is a very noticeable thing, but we actually, though, there are a lot of other little subtle things that we watch each other for all the time. It doesn't have to be those very noticeable things, and often a subtle communication works better than an overt kind of thing. So, but you just have to really be aware of the music, aware of who has the important lines. One thing that we always do is, because we rehearse about once a week, and so from one week to the next, we often forget what we talked about the last week. So we have to be really careful to write in our parts who's playing here, either to know who to watch for, or just to remember whether really important line. Often in our pieces that we play, the flute is very low, is playing low, and when the flute is in the low part of her register, she can't be heard if the rest of us are playing loud. So it's really important that we know who's important, and the other times the rest of us kind of want to be heard, but maybe not as much as the most important one.
The Haydn that we just played is a presto. Okay, do you think presto is a fast tempo or a slow tempo? It's a fast tempo. That's right. Now, when we were talking about how we came in together, you noticed that Anne
roughly, not only do we know, we have to know what each other has, but also we know roughly what that tempo's gonna be.
Yeah.
And we might make a slight adjustment, you know, if we get going real fast or something like that. But it's always a matter of listening and watching, sort of as you do with a conductor. But for us, we have to do it depending on who's got the most important part at that moment.
Yeah.
He's sitting right there. Does that mean he has the lowest part? You know, like, gets to listen farther back than
You mean
the-
he?
than, like,
No, just the
Oh, you
main
mean-
part.
okay.
No, you're
High
right.
and low.
You're
Yeah,
right.
yeah. No, actually, ours is kind of, I mean, mine's the highest part, most of the time, but not all the time. And then, are you guys exactly the same range? No, you have a lower range?
Yeah.
Right.
Pretty
That
close.
was old.
Yeah, this one.
You can almost see, you know, just actually by looking at the instruments, at least the woodwinds, the bigger instrument, like the bassoon's gonna have the lower sound, almost always. We're pretty comparable.
Range-wise.
Flute tends to, dominate the upper parts, and clarinet lower within the three of us, but we are actually pretty close in terms of range. And Kara bassoon is definitely lower and anchoring things. And Rob, of course, he has to fulfill all sorts of things. It's even strange to have a horn in a woodwind, what would be called a woodwind group, because Rob is a hornist, he's a brass player, obviously.
And if you notice, his bell points that way. If the horn player were sitting on the sides, I think you'd hear.
Well, sitting where the flute is sitting. My business end of my instrument would be pointed out. It would be, it might overpower the group.
And all of us have that as a possibility. Rob plays principal horn in the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra, which he would be projecting much stronger. He's capable of wiping us out,
Yeah,
basically.
basically.
So he points back, but he also is having to be very cautious to play with us, so he's got some great control.
So we're gonna play one movement from a piece.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, you gotta have your hand up.
What's the conductor of the first piece?
The composer.
Composer was, his name was, well,
B-A-R-T-H-E.
yeah, Barta.
So we're gonna play a piece now by Telemann, T-E-L-E-M-A-N-N, and it's going to feature the French horn. Because
Suggest
what?
third movement.
Sure. Whichever one you want to do.
Just do, this is not that long, just one, that's one, and on the second.
Second. Okay.
Yes, right.
And what was the name?
I beg your pardon?
What's the name of the song of the piece?
It's a minuet.
There you go.
kind of thing. So, just a little bit of history for this. The other thing is, I may be featured a little more prominently in this piece than some of the other pieces, but I always have to consider, that I am a stronger instrument than the rest of the group, and so I really have to be careful to make sure I'm fitting in with them. Okay, this piece I can maybe stick out a little bit more, but
But you're not playing fortissimo.
I'm still not playing my loudest. Yeah. Okay, let's just go back to the movie then. Finish it.
That was Telemann, by the way, Telemann.
Why don't we switch places just for like one line, so they can hear what it sounds like if you sit over here.
Okay.
I just think that might be kind of specific. I want to know what it
Telemann. I won't take off her spell.
at the beginning, just the first, well, no. Yeah, start. Ninth bar? Okay. So is it really different? I mean, I don't know. You can't hear me?
Yeah, we can't hear you, but he sounds the same.
Okay, well, that's why I sit through that. One thing, just that another thought I wanted to share is that we don't have a conductor, and so we have to look at each other. We have to communicate a lot, but and in a larger group, orchestra, band, it's important to have a conductor because there can be a lag in, people in the back are going to hear things later from the front later, and there can be problems with ensemble. However, in spite of that, it is still important when you're playing in a large group to use the same skills. You really use the same skills in a large group that you use in a small group. You have to listen to each other. You have to know whether you're in the important line. Even though you need the conductor to be able to be together in front of the group, you still have to listen to each other, and it's really important. So I think chamber music is really going to help your playing in a larger group. Aside from the fact that chamber playing is a lot of fun because you get to be a solo role rather than just being a part of the larger ensemble. But also specifically for brass players, in the Woodwind Quintet, I really have to be a lot more conscious of how loud I'm playing and making sure, since my sound is maybe a different than the groups, I really have to adjust my articulation and a lot of things to try to fit well with them. When I play with the brass quintet, I play totally different than I do with this group here. I noticed that a few years ago when I played a Easter Sunday service with a bunch of really good brass players, and I realized, man, I was just playing in a totally different way than I played with this group. I actually have to really be conscious of putting out the sound when I'm with the brass group, whereas with this group I have to be more conscious of, playing softer. But the one other thing I will say is, though, I don't really, in a sense, even think about that when I'm doing it so much. It just happens naturally because I'm always instinctively trying to blend with whoever I'm playing with. So in one sense, even though I play differently with the brass quintet, my way of thinking about it isn't any different than when I play with the wooden quintet or the brass quintet or in the orchestra. I'm always thinking about how I'm fitting in with everybody else.
Let's do two at once.
We're going to do two movements that are really different from one another. So see what maybe you could notice in terms of speed, maybe, or in generally energy, style, anything that's different. And then once you figure that out, kind of watch to see if you notice anything different that we do for movement. Yeah, second one was a lot faster than the first one. Anything else?
First one was kind of a minor and kind of like, I forget it, like, C, D, E, and extra, kind of, whatever that is. And then the second one is like really big.
Yeah, more of a dark, kind of a sad quality. The first one is a little brighter.
The composer of that, are you ready?
Yeah, be ready.
His first name is Robert, that's very easy. His last name is Muczynski. Are you ready? Muczynski. And the first piece we played was called Solitude. That's actually the second one, we played the second one first. And then the first one was waltz. What's a waltz?
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, what were was the first one a minor key and the second one a major key?
Ish,
Yes.
yeah. Definitely minor third.
Solid.
So do you have favorite pieces that you play in your band and then ones that are less favorites?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And what's hard about playing the not so favorite ones? What?
Not as enjoyable.
They're not as enjoyable, yes, sir.
You don't keep your focus.
Bravo, yes, yes.
You're not really into the music, so you're not really, your mind isn't really like into it, you're not into this for.
It's, so, I think that happens to us. I mean, certainly among all these pieces that we've played, I have ones that I prefer. I mean, I like them all, but there's ones I really like to play. There's ones, they're fine. And it takes a different kind of concentration to keep your mind going, to be present and really play all the notes and, you know, particularly put in, what's something that your directors probably discuss with you a lot that has to do with how a piece is gonna sound to people? We haven't really talked about it yet.
Sound quality over volume.
Volume and sound quality, very, very good. So how do you work on sound quality and try and make it blend? What's blend? Yes,
It means they all sort of, correct, like nobody sticks out.
bravo, nobody sticks out. And then sometimes we want somebody to stick out, but that's not usually too difficult. You want to stick out. But anyway. So, yeah. So this one I love.
Should we ask for some questions first?
Do you have any questions? How many of you play in a chamber group without a conductor?
Hold on, everybody.
Excellent. So
Bravo.
what problems do you guys have playing without a director?
Oh, here it comes.
Well,
Yeah.
listen,
Having people like pay attention.
we do
I
too.
mean, they talk. Oh,
Yeah,
Staying together.
staying together, right? Sure. And why is that?
Because we don't have a conductor, so we can't really like count with each other.
And so besides what we talked about, how to start and end together and change tempos and that kind of thing, what else would really help that situation out? We sort of already alluded to part of it is to know what everybody has. The other part is we go home and practice these things and use metronomes and use tuners and take care of our own business so that as much as possible we can come prepared to play an ensemble.
what?
Well, also it helps
Yes, if you
That's
count,
very
that does help a lot.
It's hard to tune
Very, very hard. And every instrument in this group has its own set of intonation problems. You know, I mean, my problems aren't necessarily his problems, but between us, they're our problems. And when you're tuning with somebody, is somebody right?
Well, the clarinet's always right.
Yeah.
Aside from that, no, we all have to work hard on that. We tune tuned on the, on that opening pitch, as I'm sure you do, and that helps give us an idea of where we are on that particular note. But dynamics have a lot to do with it, and where we're at in the range, and where our problem notes are. And we're basically always working on that. It never changes. We started at your age and still spend, the same amount of time or more working on rhythm and working on sound and working on intonation. We're not a machine, so those things are going to be issues that we have to deal with.
That's an interesting, all right, did you hear what he said? You have to tap your foot. What do you think of that? Well, he has an opinion.
Yeah, I don't think that tapping your foot is a good idea because everybody feels it differently. I can tap absolutely against what somebody else feels, and it would be very destructive. And I don't personally like seeing other people tapping or making any other movement of that type because it can be not what I feel. And I just wanted to comment. All of us were commenting on how we coordinate our playing, how we look at each other, looking at the hand breathing or anybody else. And Rob said that he has to blend the volume of his sound to us. But there's one important thing that, again, all of us already mentioned, but I think that would answer to pretty much all of your questions about the problems in chamber music. Yes, we don't have a conductor, but even if we would, it would still not change much. We all musicians producing sounds, and still the most important part for us is to be able to listen to all of us. Tuning, rhythm, being together, volume, phrasing, breathing, all of that is based on how well you can listen. And your idea of listening should be there before everything else. I can play in tune with myself or loud or soft or whatever. If it doesn't match any of my colleagues, what's the point of doing it? So we all constantly, not in the first moment, not in the middle of the piece, but 100% of time, we constantly listening to each other. And there can be all kinds of surprises, one note can go a little faster, one phrase can go a little slower, louder, out of tune. We would try to match each other momentarily just because we constantly attune to each other.
And that's how we work without our toes, without tapping our toes. We learn to subdivide internally. So when we're playing quarter notes, we hear eighth notes, we hear 16th notes. But also we learned that when we're playing long notes, probably there's a moving line behind you that's doing that subdivision. So we listen for that subdivision, so we make sure that we're not ahead or behind, and we can spread out the beats evenly.
Yeah. Sure.
We have two clarinets, an oboe, and a saxophone, so sometimes it's hard to balance out all the dynamics so that we all sound the same dynamic. So some of us have to raise it up a dynamic, some of us have to lower it down a dynamic.
Exactly.
Right. And you learn that by just rehearsing and talking about those things.
It's also helpful to have somebody listen to you because balance is not something you necessarily can understand from being in the middle of the group. It might sound fine to you, and out in front, the person might say, "Whoa, I can't hear the bassoon," or whatever.
Yeah, and there's another. I'm sorry. There's another thought that we can add to what you said, balancing the dynamics, right? Dynamics, as we see them written on the page, meaning those Italian B or piano, forte, right? Those type of things. Do you have any decibel or any volume, physical volume number that equals to piano? To forte? Anybody knows what the forte equals to? I mean, forte for Rob would be one thing. Forte for me would be a completely different thing. So we all end up, again, using our ears and trying to figure out what is that dynamic. Also, it's not only in regard to different instruments, it also in regard to different composers. Like we would play one piece, and forte in that piece would mean one thing. Forte in the other piece, like, I don't know, forte in the piece that we will be playing
They're bell ring at 10 till, so, yeah.
Okay, I think we have enough time to do the first two movements, is that right?
Sure.
One, two.
This is a little, you might want to get the spelling on this too. This is a Cuban composer who moved to the United States, immigrated many years ago. His name is Paquito, P-A-Q-U-I-T-O. And then his last name is D. Rivera, capital D, comma, apostrophe, yeah. R-I-V-E-R-A. It's one of those things you should be learning in school. I forgot many years ago. Paquito D, apostrophe, Rivera, R-I-V-E-R-A. And you would capitalize the R as well.
And what was the name of the song again?
Well, it's called Air Tropicalis, and we're going to do several movements of it. And that is A-I-R-E-S. It's the name of the composition. The Tropicalis, T-R-O-P-I-C-A-L-E-S. And we're doing two movements that are just basically different kind of Latin American music. Oh, great.
guys have any questions? Anything that you wanted to fill out on here that you on your evaluation
Yeah,
that you
go
weren't
ahead.
sure?
I noticed that that oboe looks different than the other one.
Yeah, you're right. That's a big oboe. It's called English horn. It plays in this key of F, I guess. Yeah. How do you explain that? Yeah, it has absolutely exactly the same fingerings as the oboe, but it's just a little bigger and have this little angle thing here.
Show that next to the elbow.
Yeah. Here's the oboe.
Notice my shit back there.
Who was the composer of that song again?
Paquito de Rivera.
I can handle that.
R-I-V-I-E-R.
It is a pickle. Sure.
So awesome.
That song that we just played,
Air trumpet.
it's called Airs Tropicalis, A-I-R-E-S, T-R-O-P-I-C-A-L-E-S.
Does anybody have any other questions?
We have one
Well-
more movement we can play if you want.
Well, actually, they've got to take the lunch trays all the way back to the lunchroom before the bell rings. But I did want to say before we're all done, this is like the third or fourth time that I've had the group from DePauw University here, and a big reason that we all do chamber music in December is because of having you guys out. It inspired me to like watching them play and seeing the way that they work together and how it wasn't necessarily led by a director or led by a conductor. I thought that would be something that you guys could glean a lot from. So they have inspired me a lot, and I hope you guys have liked them as well. So can we give them a big round of applause? If you need to take your lunch trays back to lunchroom, you can do that. Otherwise, you can go ahead and head to